If you look at the entire timeline of human history, our species, Homo sapiens, has been around for about 300,000 years. But long before we arrived, another human species sustained a global presence for nearly 2 million years. During that massive span of time, they became the first members of our genus to leave Africa. They spread across the Levant, the Caucasus, and all the way into Southeast Asia, completing one of the longest migrations in evolutionary history without tips, wheels, or boats. We usually assume that surviving on a global scale requires certain biological upgrades, a massive brain, superior physical speed, and a constant drive to invent. Homo erectus had none of those things. They were completely average in speed, their brains were significantly smaller than ours, and they used the exact same design for their stone tools for over 1.5 million years. They lacked almost every metric of progress we value today. How did this primitive species manage to become the longest surviving member of the human family? The fossil record gives us a clear look at their physical hardware. This is the Skeleton of Turkana Boy, dating back 1.5 million years. It reveals a body engineered for long-distance travel, with longer legs, shorter arms, and a narrower pelvis to conserve energy. Down at the ankle, their Achilles tendon functioned like a biological spring. It stored and released energy, making their gait incredibly efficient. Moving across the Pleistocene plains also meant dealing with midday temperatures that easily exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit, while predators were forced to stop. Homo erectus possessed millions of ecron sweat glands. This active cooling mechanism allowed them to keep moving. Because they could stay cool, they likely relied on persistence hunting. They didn't need to sprint faster. They simply tracked the animal for hours until it collapsed. We still see similar tracking strategies. Today, by groups like the Sand People of Southern Africa, Homo erectus didn't conquer the old world by being the strongest predator or the fastest sprinter. They survived by becoming the ultimate endurance machine. We tend to equate larger brains with biological success, but in an environment where every calorie is a struggle, a massive brain is a dangerous liability. In modern humans, it accounts for 2% of body weight, yet burns 20% of resting energy. Natural selection favors the brain delivering the highest survival return, ranging from 600 to 1,100 cubic centimeters. Homo erectus hit an optimal efficiency curve, possessing enough cognitive power to survive without requiring a massive surplus of food. This logic of optimization is mirrored in their stone tools, the Acheulean Handax. They used this teardrop shape to cut meat, chop branches, and dig for roots. They barely changed the design for over 1.5 million years because it already. The problem of survival, evolution rewards what works, and for Homo erectus, this was a highly versatile multi-tool that never needed an upgrade. Instead of constantly inventing new technology, they used their cognitive power to deeply process their surrounding environment. They constructed mental maps of the terrain, remembered water locations, and tracked complex animal migrations to move before food became scarce. Their intelligence was defined by the discipline to perfect.
Execute and remember what already worked. To push into the freezing winters of Eurasia, they outsourced their survival. They had to master an external force greater than any stone tool.
Fire controlled fire, provided warmth, and drove away predators. More importantly, cooking softened tough meat and roots. By pre-digesting their food with heat, they reduced energy needed for digestion and absorbed significantly more calories from every meal, but also protected their human capital. This fossilized skull found in Dmanisi, Georgia, dates back roughly 1.8 million years and reveals a radical shift in survival strategy. This individual lived for a long period after losing nearly all their teeth. In a prehistoric world, it would have been impossible to chew. The rest of the group had to help, likely by processing or softening their food for them. Providing this care required significant effort, but it carried a major. Older individuals were living repositories of survival strategy. They knew how to find water during decade-long droughts, or how to navigate through shifts in predator behavior that younger hunters hadn't yet experienced. They achieved resilience by turning raw individual experience into a shared communal resource that protected the entire species. If Homo erectus was the most perfectly optimized survivor in history, why did they ultimately disappear? There was no single apocalyptic doomsday. Instead, the Earth's climate simply shifted one too many times during their final phase. In places like Java, the open grasslands they were adapted for became increasingly wet, rapidly transforming into dense tropical rainforests. The long-distance endurance that allowed them to thrive in open landscapes no longer worked in thick forests. Human groups became isolated by dense environments and shifting sea levels. Their populations fragmented, their numbers dwindled, and their genetic diversity plummeted until they quietly faded out. By the time the last populations of Homo erectus disappeared, newer species like Homo sapiens were already spreading. We possessed larger brains that, despite the heavy energy cost, allowed for rapid behavioral shifts and technological leaps when the climate changed around us. Homo erectus proves that evolution is not a race to build the smartest or strongest creature. It is a test of flexibility. They survived for nearly 2 million years, reminding us that in an ever-changing world, the only true metric of success is the ability to adapt.